Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The sea had grown cruel in the far west, where no map was drawn and no sailor's tale reached the hearths of men. The wind came sharp as broken glass, screaming across black waters that rolled like the backs of beasts. On that endless expanse rode a small ship, Nymeria's Grace, her masts groaning, her sails torn, and her crew clinging to what faith they had left. Arya Stark stood at the prow, her cloak whipped about her shoulders, the spray of salt freezing in her hair. She had long since lost count of the days since she'd left Westeros behind. The lands of men, their wars and crowns, were fading ghosts now. She was chasing a whisper, the promise of what lay west of west, as the old Meisters had said with doubtful smiles. The ship had endured calm seas and silent stars for many moons, but now the ocean had turned against them. The storm had risen without warning, black and full of thunder that cracked like the wrath of gods. Lightning ripped open the clouds, revealing waves tall as towers. Arya's hand gripped needle, useless against wind and wave, yet somehow it steadied her heart. "Hold her straight," shouted Tom, the captain, a bearded man from Gulltown who had sworn he'd sailed every sea there was. "If we turn broadside, we're lost." The crew scrambled, 6 souls besides Arya, faces pale with fear. The mainmast split with a deafening crack. Wood splintered, ropes snapped, and one man vanished screaming into the dark water. Arya lurched forward, seizing a line to tie down what remained of the sail, her fingers raw and bleeding. The ship was dying beneath them, creaking like an old beast taking its last breath. Then she saw it, ahead through the storm, faint and white as a ghost. Land. "Land!" she cried, though her voice was torn from her mouth by the wind. The captain caught sight of it a heartbeat later. Jagged cliffs rimmed with ice, glinting like glass under the lightning. He tried to steer them toward it, but the waves had other plans. The Nymeria's Grace struck the rocks with a shudder that flung Arya from her feet. She hit the deck hard, the world spinning in a roar of water and thunder. Then came the cold, a surge of black seawater crashing over her. When Arya awoke, there was silence. She lay half buried in snow, the air sharp enough to bite her lungs. Around her, pieces of the ship lay scattered across the ice like bones. The sea beyond was frozen now, waves locked mid-motion in glimmering stillness. The storm had passed, or perhaps she had passed into some realm where storms could not reach. She pushed herself up, shivering violently. Her clothes were stiff with salt and frost. Around her, she saw the wreckage, a mast jutting like a broken spear, a chest half buried in the snow, a man's boot without a foot inside it. She called out, her voice hoarse, "Tom? Rella? Anyone?" A muffled groan answered her from behind a heap of ice. Arya ran to it, slipping, stumbling, and pulled aside a piece of timber. Beneath it lay Tom, blood freezing on his temple, but alive. "7 save us," he muttered, blinking at her. "Where in all the hells are we?" Arya looked around, the coast stretched out pale and silent, the cliffs looming like frozen teeth. Beyond them, faint shapes rose, hills, or perhaps something else. "Somewhere no man has named," she said quietly. They found 3 others alive by nightfall. Hera, the deckhand with a burn-scarred face, little Kale, the cabin boy, and Meryn, the Meister who had insisted on joining them for knowledge's sake. The others were gone, claimed by the sea or crushed beneath the wreck. That night they built a small fire from driftwood and scraps of the ship. The flames sputtered in the wind, casting long shadows on the snow. "This place," Merrin murmured, gazing toward the cliffs. "Do you see how the ice catches the moonlight? As if there's something beneath it? Something buried?" Arya followed his gaze. The moon was rising, cold and white, and the ice did shimmer strangely. It wasn't just reflection. It was as though faint lights moved beneath the surface, pale blue and pulsing like veins of some sleeping giant. "Could be tricks of the eye," said Tom, wrapping his hands near the flame. "I don't care what's buried here. All I care about is finding warmth and food before we freeze to death." Arya didn't answer. She was listening. There was a sound beneath the wind, a low hum, steady and strange, like a voice humming through the bones of the world. She rose slowly, her instincts prickling. "Do you hear that?" she asked. The others paused. The fire hissed. The only sound was the sighing of the wind. "No," Merrin said finally. "Just the sea settling." But Arya wasn't sure. Something was calling, not to all of them, but to her. That night, as the others slept, Arya walked to the edge of the frozen sea. The moonlight spread across the ice like silver cloth. She crouched and brushed away snow until she could see beneath the surface. And there, deep below the frozen layers, something glimmered. It looked like a face. A woman's face, pale as milk. Her eyes closed, her hair floating like smoke in the ice. Arya's heart stopped. She blinked, and it was gone. She rose slowly, the air burning in her lungs. The hum had grown louder now, though she knew none of the others could hear it. Behind her, the wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of movement, footsteps crunching softly in the snow. Arya turned, her hand already on Needle's hilt. There, at the edge of the firelight, stood a figure cloaked in white fur, their face hidden beneath a hood, and when they spoke, their voice was like ice cracking on a lake. "You should not have come here, wolf girl." For a moment, neither moved. The figure's voice lingered in the air, sharp and cold as a drawn blade. The fire crackled faintly behind Arya, its glow throwing weak light upon the snow. Every instinct in her body screamed danger, yet her hand did not tremble upon Needle's hilt. "Who are you?" Arya asked, her breath steaming in the air. "What place is this?" The stranger tilted their head slightly, as if studying her. "This is the end of the world," came the quiet answer, "and it belongs to the dead." Before Arya could speak again, the figure turned and vanished into the white dark beyond the cliffs. Only their footprints remained, light, almost inhumanly so, trailing off into the frozen hills. She stood for a long moment, listening, half expecting them to return. But the night swallowed all sound. Slowly, she sheathed Needle and made her way back to the fire, where the others slept in uneasy heaps of blankets. When dawn came, a bleak, pale light spread across the coast. The sky was colorless, the sea unmoving beneath a thick skin of ice. Arya woke the others, and together they gathered what few supplies had survived the wreck: dried fish, a flask of wine, a half-ruined compass. The wind had stilled, but the cold had teeth. Tom spat into the snow and looked toward the cliffs. "If there's shelter, it'll be up there. We won't last another night in the open." Merrin agreed, though his eyes were bright with curiosity rather than fear. "There may be ruins. This place bears marks of the first men, or something older still. If there are caves, they may hold warmth." So they set out, climbing the frozen slope, The ice rose steep and cruel, the stones beneath slick with frost. Twice Kyle slipped, and Arya caught him by the arm before he could fall. Her fingers were numb, but her mind was sharp. She kept glancing back toward the shore, half expecting to see the white-cloaked stranger watching. At last, they reached the top of the cliffs and found themselves standing before a vast plain of glittering frost. The land stretched endless and silver beneath the pale sky, broken only by black stones that jutted up like old teeth. It was a dead land, yet beautiful in a strange, cold way. And in the distance, rising from the mist, they saw the faint shape of a tower, tall, narrow, and dark against the endless white. "There," said Arya. "Shelter, at least." They walked for hours, their boots crunching over the snow, the tower growing clearer with each step. Around its base lay the ruins of walls and fallen gates. Symbols were carved into the stone, spirals, circles, and strange marks that made Arya's skin prickle. "It's older than the north," Meryn whispered in awe. "Older than the wall itself. The first men may have come from here, or perhaps the others did." They entered the tower's base, where a great door hung from one hinge. Inside was dim light and bitter cold, but no sign of life. The air smelled faintly of stone and dust. Arya moved carefully, torch in hand, sweeping its light over the walls. The carvings continued inside, spirals repeating again and again, surrounding crude figures of men kneeling before something vast and shadowed. In one carving, that shadow reached down, and the kneeling men turned to ice. Kale shuddered. "I don't like this place." "None of us do," said Tom, but he was already moving to set up a fire. They rested there, eating what little food remained. The walls seemed to hum faintly, the same low sound Arya had heard the night before. When she mentioned it, the others only exchanged uneasy glances. As the night deepened, Meryn could not contain his scholar's curiosity. He began examining the carvings more closely, tracing the symbols with gloved fingers. "It's a record," he murmured. "A warning, perhaps. These spirals, the same pattern was found beyond the wall after the Great War. The White Walkers marked their dead this way." Arya felt the cold settle deeper in her bones. "Then we shouldn't stay." But before they could argue, a faint sound reached them, a cry, distant yet unmistakable. Kyle gasped. "That's Rella's voice." The deckhand who had vanished during the storm. The voice came from outside, faint and desperate. Without hesitation, Arya seized her torch and ran into the night. The others followed, their boots pounding over the snow. The cry came again, clearer this time. "Arya, help me!" They ran toward the sound, through the ruins, down toward a hollow where the snow gathered deep, and there, lying half-buried, they found Rella, her skin pale as the ice, her eyes wide and frightened. "Gods," whispered Tom, dropping to his knees. "She's alive." But when Arya knelt beside her, something was wrong. Rella's eyes were open, yet they did not seem to see. Her lips moved soundlessly, and her skin shimmered faintly, as if frost grew beneath it. Meryn stepped back in alarm. "Don't touch her. Look, her blood's not red." Indeed, where the ice had cut her cheek, no red welled forth, only a faint trickle of something pale and silvery, glinting in the torchlight. Rella's lips parted, and a thin breath escaped her. "He waits," she whispered, "the last shadow, beneath the ice." Then her body stiffened, and her eyes turned white. The torch in Arya's hand flickered wildly. From the darkness around them came a new sound, a whisper, low and many-voiced, like wind moving through hollow bones. The snow stirred, though no wind blew. and from the far edge of the plain came movement. Figures, walking slowly, cloaked in white, their faces hidden. Arya rose, pulling Needle free. "Back to the tower," she shouted. They fled through the snow, the figures following silently, gliding rather than walking. The tower loomed ahead, black against the white. As they reached its door, Tom and Meryn heaved it shut, barring it with broken timbers. The whispers continued outside, circling like wolves around a campfire. Then, after a long time, they faded into silence. The fire they built inside did little to warm them. None spoke for a while. Cale wept softly, and Meryn sat staring into the flames, muttering half to himself. Arya stood apart, watching the door. She had faced death before, in every form men and monsters could take. Yet this was something else, something colder and older than fear itself. When she finally turned back to the others, she spoke quietly but firmly. "Whatever those things are, they know we're here. If we stay, we die. At first light, we move." Tom nodded grimly. "Aye, but where?" Arya glanced toward the far wall, where the carvings formed a path of spirals leading downward into darkness. "Where the ice grows," she said. "That's where the answers lie." And as the fire burned low, the tower itself seemed to breathe, its walls sighing softly, as if the frozen land were listening. The wind outside had died to nothing. The silence pressed against the tower walls like a weight, so deep and strange that even the crackle of the fire seemed afraid to break it. Arya sat awake through most of the night, her back to the cold stone, Needle across her knees. The faint hum still ran through the tower's floor, pulsing slow and steady like a heartbeat deep beneath the ice. By morning, the storm clouds had rolled back, and a dim, pale light crept in through the cracks above the door. No birds sang. No waves moved below the cliffs. It was a land without sound, without life. Arya rose quietly and went to the doorway. Tom stirred beside the dying fire, his face drawn and hollow. Meryn lay asleep against the wall, parchment spread across his lap, the ink frozen in his inkwell. Only Cale remained motionless, his blanket pulled tight. "Up," Arya said softly. "We move now." Tom blinked at her, weary but obedient. "And go where? We saw no path, no food, no sign of men." She nodded toward the carvings on the far wall. "Down," she said. "The ice grows beneath this tower. That's where we'll find what's calling to us." Meryn woke at her words, rubbing his eyes. "You heard it too," he murmured, as if it were a question he'd long feared to ask. "That hum. It's old, older than the North. The records speak of a place where the magic of the world sleeps beneath the ice. Perhaps—" Tom cut him off with a sharp glare. "No more tales, Meister. Magic doesn't fill bellies, nor warm bones." Arya stepped to the spiral-carved wall. Beneath one of the curling lines, she found a hollow, no wider than her hand, but deep. When she pressed her fingers inside, she felt something move. A faint click echoed, and a portion of the floor gave way, revealing a stair of dark stone descending into the earth. They stared at it, silent. Cold air rose from below, carrying a faint metallic scent. "Down then," Arya said, lighting a torch. The stairs wound deep beneath the tower, slick with frost. The walls were carved with the same spiral marks, and the deeper they went, the fainter the hum became. It was replaced by a slow drip of water and the creak of ice shifting above their heads. At last, the stairs opened into a vast chamber, half cave, half ruin. Pillars of blue ice reached from floor to ceiling, glowing faintly from within. Between them lay pools of dark, still water. Kyle whispered, "It's like a frozen forest." Meryn knelt beside one of the pillars, his breath fogging in the cold. Not ice, he said after a moment. Something purer, crystalline, almost alive. He set his hand upon it, and light flared within the column, brief and white. Don't, Arya warned, but too late. The hum returned, stronger than before, and with it came a sound like cracking glass. The light inside the ice spread, forming shapes, faces blurred and shifting, hundreds of them, frozen in silent screams. Kale stumbled back, gasping. Tom drew his dagger. God save us. What are they? Meryn stared in horror. Preserved, not corpses. Memories. These people, whoever they were, they're bound in the ice itself. Arya moved closer, the torch trembling slightly in her hand. The faces were ancient, their features faintly human but stretched, distorted, as though changed by something unnatural. And beneath them, deep in the ice, something larger stirred. A shape, massive, winged, and faintly luminous. Not dragon nor man, but something between. It's sleeping, Kale whispered. Arya felt it then, the same pull she'd felt since the wreck, a call through her blood. The thing beneath the ice was not dead. It dreamed, and in its dreaming, it reached for her. We should go, Tom said, his voice low and tight. There's no good here. The dead have marked this place. Before Arya could answer, a distant cry echoed through the tunnels above. Not the whisper of the wind this time, but human, close and terrified. Another voice followed, cold and commanding, words in no tongue Arya knew, yet she understood their meaning. They are below. Bring them forth. The white-cloaked figures had returned. Run, Arya said. They fled through the chamber, following a narrow passage at the far end. The light of the torches flickered over carvings older than any human hand, scenes of a frozen sun, and men kneeling before its pale light. The passage twisted downward, the air growing colder with every step. Behind them, faint footfalls echoed, slow, steady, unhurried. Tom glanced back. They're following. We can't outrun them forever. Arya's eyes caught a shimmer ahead, an opening, faintly lit from below. She ran toward it, the others close behind. The tunnel spilled out onto a vast cavern, its floor a lake of clear ice. In its center rose a black spire, smooth as glass, glowing faintly blue from within. Meryn halted, transfixed. The heart of ice, he breathed. It must be. Arya turned to him. What is it? He shook his head slowly. If the legends are true, it's where the cold began, the source of their power. The white-cloaked pursuers entered the cavern then, a dozen of them, moving in silence. Their faces were hidden beneath hoods rimmed with frost, and in their hands they carried weapons of pale crystal that shimmered in the torchlight. Arya stepped forward, needle drawn. Stay behind me. One of the figures lowered its hood. Its face was not living, smooth, colorless skin stretched over ice, eyes like shards of frozen light. You have walked where no mortal should tread, it said, its voice echoing as though spoken by many mouths at once. Leave this place, or join the sleepers. Arya met its gaze, her fear buried deep beneath the calm of countless battles. We came by storm and sea. We're not leaving without our lives. The creature raised its hand, and frost spread across the ice at its feet. Your lives were taken when you set foot upon our shore. Then it struck. The ice erupted, a blast of cold so fierce it snuffed out their torches. Arya felt the air burn in her lungs. She ducked and rolled aside as one of the crystal blades cleaved through where she'd stood. Tom lunged with his dagger, shattering one attacker like glass, but another seized him from behind, its touch freezing his arm solid. Arya's breath came ragged. Needle's steel rang as she drove it into the chest of a cloaked figure, but the blade passed through as if striking mist. Still, The thing staggered back, its form flickering. "Fire!" she shouted. "They fear the flame." Kyle seized a torch from the ground and hurled it. The flame struck the ice and flared, spreading across the surface in bright orange tongues. The creatures recoiled, their forms wavering. Arya grabbed Tom by the arm and dragged him toward the spire. "Move! The light! There's power in it!" They ran for the center, the blue glow of the spire pulsing faster now, as if sensing them. The hum grew into a low roar, and the ice beneath their feet began to crack. As they reached the base, Meryn turned, eyes wide. "It's waking!" The creatures screamed, a sound like the shattering of glaciers. The ice split open, and a blinding light burst from the spire's heart, blue, white, and cold as eternity. For one heartbeat, Arya saw everything: the faces in the ice, the wings unfurling below, the shadow of a creature vast enough to blot the sky. Then the world vanished in the light. When Arya opened her eyes, the world was still blue. Not the blue of sky or sea, but a color deeper and colder, alive and humming with power. She lay on smooth ice, her breath a thin mist. The cavern around her was silent now. The roar had faded, leaving only the faint whisper of shifting frost. For a long moment, she did not move. Her body ached, but she was alive. Slowly, she pushed herself upright. The spire still stood at the cavern's heart, cracked but unbroken, its light dimmer now, pulsing like the heartbeat of something wounded but not dead. Tom lay nearby, half buried in snow that had not been there before. His face was pale, his lips tinged blue. Arya knelt beside him and pressed a hand to his throat. Faint, so faint, but still there. "Tom," she whispered, shaking him. "Wake up." He groaned weakly, his eyelids fluttering open. "Still breathing," he rasped, "though I'd rather not know why." Kyle's voice came from the shadows. "Over here." Arya turned. The boy was kneeling beside Myron, whose arm was blackened from elbow to wrist, frozen stiff. The maester's eyes were open, but there was no fear in them, only wonder. "Do you see?" he murmured. "It lives beneath us, not dead, never dead. It's part of the land itself." Arya looked back to the spire. The cracks that ran through it glowed faintly, veins of blue light that spread out into the ice beneath their feet. The hum was weaker now, but it hadn't ceased. It was calling still, softly, insistently. "Can you walk?" she asked the Meister. He nodded faintly, though the movement sent shards of frost scattering from his sleeve. "I can walk. I must. We need to record this. Understand it?" Tom forced himself to his feet with a low grunt. "Understand it? I say we get as far from it as our legs will carry." Kyle was trembling. "What about those things? The white men? Did we kill them?" Arya shook her head. "No. Fire drove them back, but it didn't end them." She turned toward the tunnel from which they had entered. It was half collapsed now, sealed by ice. The only other way lay beyond the spire, a dark passage that slanted downward into the earth. Tom followed her gaze. Down again? Haven't we gone far enough beneath the world? Arya's eyes lingered on the glowing cracks that spread across the cavern floor. Whatever woke when that light came, it isn't finished. If we leave it, it might find its way out. If we go on, maybe we can stop it. The Meister gave a weary, reverent nod. The girl is right. What stirs here may be the source of the cold that once birthed the White Walkers. If it wakes fully, even your wall won't keep it from the living. Tom swore under his breath, but he began gathering the torches all the same. They set out again, descending into the dark. The new passage was narrow and steep. its walls slick with frost that shimmered faintly, as if something bright moved deep within it. The air grew thicker the further they went, heavy with a scent like iron and salt. After what felt like hours, they reached a vast cavern where the walls curved upward into an arch of translucent ice. In its center stood a frozen pool, perfectly still. Beneath the surface, something glowed faintly, shapes like chains, curling and twisting in slow rhythm. Kyle knelt beside it, his reflection pale and trembling. "What is it?" "Not water," said Meron, stepping forward. "It's the same crystal as the tower above, but purer, unbroken. It's binding something beneath." Arya crouched, squinting through the glassy surface. Beneath the frost, she saw movement, a flicker of white, then the curve of something vast, like the edge of a wing. A second later, an eye opened. She stumbled back, heart hammering. The eye was not human. It burned with a cold light, blue and ancient. It saw her. "Back," she hissed. "Everyone back!" But it was too late. The ice shuddered violently, a deep groan echoing through the chamber. Cracks split the surface, and the glow brightened until it hurt to look at. Tom dragged Kale away as the pool erupted, shards of ice spraying like knives. From the depths rose a shape of mist and frost, towering and terrible, neither flesh nor spirit, but something between. Its outline shifted constantly. A woman's face one moment, a beast's skull the next, all bound in a body of swirling ice. Meron fell to his knees. "The last shadow," he whispered. "The cold made flesh." The creature's voice filled the cavern, not from its mouth, but from everywhere at once. "I dreamed long ages in the dark. You woke me, child of wolves." Its gaze fixed on Arya. "You who bear death upon your breath." Arya raised needle, though her arm trembled. "We came by mistake." "There are no mistakes," the thing said softly. "Only what the ice remembers." A wave of frost rolled outward from its body, coating the ground. Tom shouted and swung his dagger, but the air itself froze around him. Arya seized Kale's arm and pulled him behind a fallen shard of ice. The creature's form flickered, growing sharper. She could see faces within its mist, those same frozen souls from the pillars above, all weeping soundlessly. Meron stood, unafraid now. If it remembers, perhaps it can be reasoned with. But when he stepped forward, the creature's hand swept through him. His body froze solid in an instant, eyes open, lips parted in a final breath. Arya's heart clenched, but she had no time to mourn. She turned to Tom. "Get the boy and run when I say." He nodded once, grimly. The creature drifted closer, its shadow stretching over them. "You do not belong here," it murmured. "Your world of fire and blood defies the balance. The flame burns too long. The ice will reclaim what was lost." Arya took a step forward. "You think the ice should rule?" "It ruled before men forgot," said the voice. "Before dragons, before kings. The cold remembers." Arya's mind raced. Fire. Jon had said once that the cold could be fought only by flame. She still carried a small flask of oil from the ship, tucked into her belt. Her hands moved fast, tearing a strip from her cloak, soaking it in oil, lighting it with the dying torch Tom held. The creature reached toward her. The air turned sharp, her skin burning from the cold. She hurled the flaming cloth at its chest. The fire struck, and the thing screamed, not in pain, but in fury. Its form shattered, then reformed, the flames burning bright where its heart should be. Tom grabbed Kale, shouting, "Now!" They ran, slipping over the ice as the chamber collapsed behind them. The creature roared, the sound shaking the earth. Arya turned once, saw the fire spreading across its form, melting the frost around it. Yet even as it burned, it laughed, a sound that echoed through the tunnels long after the flames faded. When they reached the upper cavern again, the blue glow of the spire had gone out. The ice was melting, water pooling at their feet. Above, daylight shone faintly through cracks in the ceiling. Tom slumped to the ground, gasping. Is it dead? Arya looked back toward the darkness they'd fled. The hum was gone, but the silence that replaced it felt wrong. Too deep, too empty. No, she said at last. It's waiting. Kale's small voice broke the quiet. What do we do now? Arya turned toward the faint light above them, the taste of salt still on her lips. The memory of that blue gaze burned behind her eyes. We climb, she said, and we tell the world what sleeps where the ice grows. The boy nodded. Tom rose beside her. Together they began to climb, leaving behind the broken spire and the cold thing that dreamed beneath it, unseen but not forgotten. And far below, in the darkness, something shifted. A single crack spread across the melting ice, and a whisper rose once more. The cold remembers. The climb was long and merciless. The tunnels wound upward through ice and stone, slick as glass, and every sound echoed like a whisper of ghosts. The air grew warmer with each step, though it still bit at the lungs. Arya led the way, her torch a frail bloom of gold against the shadows. Behind her came Tom, leaning on his blade as a walking stick, and Kyle, pale and silent, clutching what little remained of their food. They climbed until the faint blue of daylight appeared above, a rift in the ceiling, narrow and jagged. Arya squeezed through first, the ice scraping her palms, and pulled herself into a shallow hollow beneath the open sky. It was morning. The sun, pale and weak, hung low above a horizon of endless white. The storm had scoured the land clean, leaving behind only a still, frozen plain. Not a bird flew. Not a tree broke the wind. Tom hauled himself out behind her, coughing. So this is what lies west of the world, he muttered. An empty grave of snow. Arya said nothing. She was staring at the horizon, where dark shapes moved against the light, figures walking in slow procession across the plain. More of them, Tom said grimly. They've followed us. No, Arya murmured. They're not moving toward us. They're going south. Kale crawled up beside them, eyes wide. Where are they going? Arya watched in silence, her heart tightening. The creatures, the white-cloaked remnants that had haunted them, were heading toward the sea, toward open water, and though they walked slowly, their ranks stretched farther than she could count. They're leaving this place, she said. Tom's face hardened. Then let them. Let the ice take the ocean, the islands, anything it pleases. We've done our part. But Arya's gaze lingered on the distant ranks. She could not shake the image of that cold, burning eye beneath the ice. The last shadow. If it had truly awakened, then it would not stay buried for long. They descended from the cliffs by noon, their limbs stiff with exhaustion. The wreck of the Nymeria's Grace still lay half-frozen in the shallows below, its ribs jutting from the ice like the bones of a leviathan. The sea was cracked and motionless, glimmering faintly beneath the weak sun. They searched what remained of the ship. Most of the supplies were gone, swept away by the storm or claimed by the cold. Yet beneath the broken hull, Arya found a small chest wedged between beams, one she remembered from the captain's quarters. Inside were flasks of oil, a dagger wrapped in cloth, and a single sealed letter. The wax was cracked, but the writing inside was still clear. It bore the seal of House Stark. She opened it with trembling fingers. To my sister Arya, it read in Jon's hand. If this letter finds you, Know that the north endures. Ghost guards the wall once more, and men speak of peace, though the cold is never far. If you seek what lies beyond the maps, remember that every shadow comes from light, and that both are needed. You are of the wolf, but also of the world. Return when you can. The pack still waits. Her chest tightened. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it inside her cloak. Tom was watching her. "Home calling?" he asked softly. Arya nodded once. "It always does." They built a small fire beside the wreck, though the smoke rose weakly in the still air. For a moment, it almost felt like safety, like the long nights she'd spent with the Brotherhood, or the quiet fires at Winterfell. But the peace did not last. As the day waned, a tremor ran through the ice beneath them. Faint at first, then stronger. The sea moaned, the sound deep and mournful. Kyle leapt to his feet. "What is it?" Arya rose, scanning the horizon. A pale mist was spreading across the plain, moving fast. The air itself seemed to freeze, the light dimming until the sun vanished behind a veil of cloud. "The ice is moving," Tom said grimly. "The sea's breaking again." Arya listened. Beneath the groan of shifting ice came another sound, distant, rhythmic, like the beating of enormous wings. She looked up just in time to see a shape cut through the clouds. It was vast, shadowed, and silent, a creature of ice and storm, flying low above the frozen sea. The last shadow had risen. Its wings stretched wider than a castle wall, trailing shards of frost that glittered like falling stars. Its cry split the sky, shaking the air. The ranks of white-cloaked figures below fell to their knees as it passed overhead, their heads bowed. Arya felt the world tilt. "It's free," she breathed. Tom gripped his dagger as if it could make any difference. "And now what? You mean to fight that?" Her eyes burned. "If it flies east, it won't stop at the sea. It'll find the lands of men. It'll find the wall." The creature circled once, then turned toward the horizon, toward the setting sun. Its wings beat once more, and the ice beneath it cracked in great splintering lines that stretched for miles. The sound was thunderous, echoing through the hollow air. Arya clenched her fists. "We can't let it go." Tom stared at her as if she were mad. "You'd chase a god across the end of the world?" She met his gaze. "I've chased worse, and gods can bleed." The old sailor studied her a long moment, then spat into the snow. "Then let's see if this one can die." They salvaged what they could, oil, ropes, a single surviving sailcloth, and made ready a crude sled from the remains of the ship's hull. The plan was madness, and they all knew it. Yet when the last shadow moved, the air itself followed. Its wings stirred storms that could carry them faster than the strongest wind. As the creature vanished beyond the cliffs, they followed its trail across the plain, the sled scraping over the ice. The sky dimmed and the cold deepened, but Arya's heart burned hotter than the frost. For 2 days they pursued it, sleeping in short bursts, feeding on melted snow and scraps. They saw its shadow often, a vast shape crossing the clouds, moving always westward. On the 3rd day, the ground began to change. The white gave way to pale glass, and the air shimmered faintly. The ice had grown thin here, as if the sea below were restless. Kyle pointed ahead. "Look!" In the distance rose an island, small, black, and crowned with spires of dark stone. The creature descended toward it, wings folding as it vanished into the mist that clung to its shores. Arya's pulse quickened. "That's where it's gone." They drew the sled to a halt. The sea around the island steamed faintly, as though some heat moved beneath. Tom stared at the dark spires. "A cursed place if ever I've seen one," Arya's eyes were fixed on the island's heart, where faint blue light flickered through the fog. "That's where this ends," she said. They left the sled behind and crossed the cracking ice on foot, stepping from one jagged floe to the next. The mist thickened until the world seemed nothing but gray and white. Then, at last, the ground beneath their boots turned to stone, smooth and cold, yet warm to the touch in places, as though fire and frost warred beneath its skin. Kyle gasped softly. "It's not dead rock. It's alive." Arya drew needle, the blade catching the faint light. "Then we'll wake it properly." From the mist ahead came a sound, a slow, deep breathing. The island itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with it. The air shimmered, and shadows began to move between the stones. Arya took a step forward. "Stay close," she said quietly. "Whatever waits here isn't finished with us yet." The mist parted then, revealing the black mouth of a cavern that pulsed with cold light, and from its depths came the voice she had heard in her dreams since the storm. "You brought the flame to the edge of the world, wolf girl. Now see what burns when the ice remembers." The voice rolled through the mist like thunder buried beneath the earth. Its echo shivered through the stone beneath their feet, and Kyle clapped his hands to his ears with a cry. Tom stumbled back, his blade drawn though it trembled in his grip. Arya alone stood unmoving, every muscle taut. The cavern mouth ahead gaped wide and dark, its walls pulsing faintly with blue veins of light. Steam rose from it in soft tendrils, carrying a scent like old snow and ash. "Inside," Arya whispered. Tom caught her arm. "Are you mad? That thing speaks in your head. It's death itself down there." She met his eyes. "If we turn back now, it follows us. You saw it take the sky. You think it will stop at this island?" His jaw clenched. He wanted to argue, but there was no room left for doubt. At last, he nodded grimly. "Then lead on, wolf girl, and let the gods watch." They entered the cavern. The air grew colder with each step, heavy with the hum of unseen power. The walls were slick, carved by hands or claws, larger than any man's. The light came from the veins in the rock itself, shifting from blue to white and back again, like the slow breathing of some great beast. After a time, they came upon a bridge of ice that arched across a chasm. Below yawned a black abyss where faint sparks of light drifted upward like falling snow in reverse. Arya peered down and saw shapes moving far below, vast and slow, like shadows swimming through deep water. Kyle shuddered. "It's not empty," he whispered. "No," Arya said. "Nothing here ever is." They crossed carefully, their footsteps echoing like drums. On the far side, the tunnel opened into a chamber so vast that their torches could not find its edges. At its center stood a frozen dais, and upon it a figure, tall, cloaked in frost, motionless. Around the dais the floor was littered with bones, men, beasts, and stranger things, with too many limbs and too many eyes. Arya felt the pull again, deep in her chest. The figure on the dais was not merely ice. Beneath the frost, faint lines of silver gleamed, armor of no make she knew, engraved with symbols that shimmered like stars. In its hands it held a sword, long and thin, the metal black as night yet edged with blue fire. Tom's voice came as a rasp. "Another of them?" "No," said Arya softly. "This one's different." As if in answer, the figure's head lifted. A soft cracking sounded as the frost broke from its shoulders. The hood fell back, revealing a face not wholly monstrous nor wholly human. Pale as snow, eyes like sapphires burning beneath skin thin as glass. It regarded them in silence, and when it spoke, the air itself seemed to freeze. "You bear the mark of the flame," it said to Arya. "You woke what should have slept forever." Arya's grip tightened on Needle. "You mean the shadow? It broke free. If you mean to stop it, help us. If not, then stand aside." The figure tilted its head slightly, a gesture almost human. "You cannot kill what was never alive. The shadow is the dream of the world before light. When the gods of fire came, they chained it beneath the sea. But every chain melts in time." Kale whimpered softly. "Then why did you bring us here?" The creature's gaze turned to him, and its voice softened. "The flame calls to the frost as frost calls to flame. Balance must return. The girl carries both." Arya frowned. "What do you mean?" The being stepped from the dais, the ice groaning beneath its feet. "You carry death, child of wolves. The faces you wear, the lives you've taken, they are bound to you. The cold recognizes its own." A chill ran through her. "You're saying I'm like you?" "I am saying you are what comes next." Before she could speak, the ground trembled. A great crack split the floor, spreading outward from the dais. The bones scattered, and from the darkness below, blue light flared, blinding and alive. The creature turned toward the chasm, its expression unreadable. "It comes," it said. "The shadow rises, the air burns with its hunger." Arya stepped forward. "Then help us stop it." "I cannot," said the being. "My kind bound it once, and for that we were cursed. I am the last of them, and my time fades." It looked to her then, its icy gaze unblinking. "But you carry the wolf's blood and the fire that slew the dead. You can end what we began." "How?" she demanded. "By cutting the dream." The sword it held, black and burning blue, rose between them. The blade shimmered as if filled with stars. "Take it," the being said. "Its name is Frostsong. It was forged when the world was young, to divide the living from the lost." Arya hesitated, then stepped forward. The hilt was cold, but when she closed her hand around it, warmth surged through her arm. A strange, wild warmth, both life and death at once. Tom watched, awed. "That's no man's blade." "No," Arya said. "But it might be mine." The being nodded once. "When you face the shadow, do not strike at its heart. Strike at its reflection." Before Arya could ask what that meant, the cavern erupted in light. The ceiling split apart, and a rush of freezing air poured through. The last shadow descended, its wings folding as it entered, vast enough to fill the chamber. Its body was not solid, but woven of mist and frost, its face shifting between human and monstrous forms. The creature on the dais turned toward it, spreading its arms. "Old one," it said softly. "Sleep again." The shadow's voice roared like an avalanche. "You dare command me, broken child of ice?" It struck with a sweep of its wing. The pale guardian shattered where it stood, breaking into 1,000 shards that scattered like snow. Arya cried out, shielding her eyes from the storm of ice. When she looked again, the dais was empty save for the pieces of the fallen being, glowing faintly like embers dying in snow. The last shadow turned its gaze upon her, and now the fire-bearer stands alone. Its wings spread, the wind howling. Arya raised Frostsong, the blade burning blue in her grasp. Tom dragged Kale behind a broken pillar, shouting something she couldn't hear. The shadow lunged, its form surging forward like a tidal wave of frost and smoke. Arya leapt aside, the blade cutting through its wing. Light flared where she struck, but the wound closed instantly, sealing with mist. "You cannot kill a dream," it hissed. "You can only wake it." "Then I'll wake you forever," she spat. The shadow's laughter filled the cavern. "Try, wolf girl. It struck again. The air cracked like glass. Arya rolled beneath the blow, her body moving on instinct, her breath ragged. The voice of the fallen guardian echoed faintly in her mind. Strike at its reflection. Reflection. She spun, searching the ice that lined the cavern walls. There, beneath the shadow's storming wings, the faint gleam of its own image rippled across the frozen ground. She ran. The shadow followed, its scream shaking the stone. At the edge of the chamber, she turned and drove Frostsong down into the ice, straight through the reflection's heart. The world erupted. Light burst upward, not cold this time, but blinding white, searing through mist and shadow alike. The creature's cry was no longer laughter, but rage and pain and something older still. The ice beneath her cracked open, swallowing the darkness whole. When the light faded, the cavern was silent once more. Arya stood trembling, Frostsong buried in the ground before her. The mist was gone. The shadow was gone. Only the echo of its voice remained, drifting faintly through the still air. The cold remembers. Tom's hand found her shoulder. "You did it," he breathed. "You killed it." Arya stared at the blade, its blue fire dimming. "No," she said softly. "I ended its dream, but some dreams wake again." Far above them, through the shattered ceiling, the first true sunlight they had seen in days poured down upon the island, turning the melting ice to gold. And for the first time since the storm, Arya Stark of Winterfell let herself breathe. They emerged from the cavern at dusk, weary and silent, their shadows long upon the frozen shore. The sun was sinking in a sky the color of bruised steel, its last light glinting on the melted veins that now scarred the island's dark stone. The sea beyond was restless again, no longer locked in frost, but heaving slow and heavy as if it too had woken from a dream. Tom leaned against a jagged rock, breathing hard. "If I never see another piece of cursed ice, I'll die happy." Arya said nothing. Frostsong hung at her hip, the blade wrapped in cloth, its faint blue light still visible through the fabric. The sword pulsed faintly, like a heart that refused to sleep. Kyle crouched beside the water's edge, staring at his reflection. He looked older than his years, his cheeks hollow, his eyes wide and haunted. "Is it truly gone?" he asked. Arya followed his gaze toward the horizon, where the mist had cleared. "Gone?" she murmured. "For now, but things like that never die. Not completely." She remembered the Guardian's words. "You are what comes next." A chill lingered inside her, though the air was no longer cold. They built a fire with driftwood and the scraps of the broken sled. The flames flickered weakly, casting golden light on the rock. Around them, the island sighed and cracked, as though something deep beneath was shifting still. Tom tossed a handful of dried kelp into the fire and rubbed his arms. "You think the world will believe what we've seen?" Arya shook her head. "No, but they'll feel it. The ice moved today. The sea will change, and the cold will carry whispers east." He grunted. "Then I hope the whispers freeze before they reach the wall." Silence fell between them. The stars came out, clear, sharp, and strange. Constellations she did not know burned above, as if she had stepped beyond the sky she once belonged to. She sat a while watching the flames, the sound of the crackling fire mixed with the slow rush of the waves. Then Kyle spoke softly, not looking at her. "You said we'll go home." Arya's eyes lifted to the dark horizon. East, back to the world of men." He nodded, but his voice trembled. "Will home still be there? Or has it all changed too?" Arya thought of Winterfell, of snow upon stone, of her mother's hands, her father's voice, her sister's laughter. She had chased death across the world, worn other faces, forgotten her own, but the memory of home had never left her. "It's there," she said at last. "It always is." When dawn came, they set about repairing what remained of the Nemeria's grace. The hull was broken, but enough wood and sail remained to fashion a small craft. Tom worked with steady hands, muttering curses under his breath, while Cale gathered what supplies the island offered: fish from the shallows, salt scraped from the rocks, melted snow for water. By the third day, the sea was calm enough to risk it. Their boat was crude, but it floated, and that was enough. As they pushed off from the shore, Arya looked back at the island. The spires of dark stone rose black against the sky. No mist clung to them now, but she could feel the weight of eyes upon her still, eyes buried deep beneath the rock, waiting. "Good riddance," Tom muttered, spitting overboard. Arya's fingers brushed the hilt of Frost Song. "Good riddance," she echoed, but her voice was low, uncertain. They sailed eastward. For a time, the journey was quiet. The days grew longer, the nights softer. They found open water again, deep, dark, and cold, but free of ice. The air smelled faintly of salt and kelp, and the wind was steady. It almost felt like peace. Then, on the fifth night, Arya dreamed. She stood upon a frozen field beneath a black sky. The stars were gone. Only pale light bled from the horizon. Before her rose the wall, broken and hollow, its ice melting like tears. Beyond it stretched a forest of dead trees, their branches tipped with blue flame. A voice came from the darkness behind her. "Did you think you could end what began before men had names?" She turned. The last shadow stood there, smaller now, its form faint, like smoke clinging to dying embers. Its eyes burned faintly blue. "You struck my reflection," it said. "But a reflection is only light upon a surface. I endure." Arya's hand went to Frost Song. "If you want another fight." It laughed softly. "No, you freed me, and now the cold moves where it will. The world will know me again, not in shadow, but in snow." The wind rose, cutting through her like knives. The creature began to fade, its voice echoing faintly as it dissolved into the dark. The flame sleeps, the ice remembers. Arya woke, gasping. The boat rocked beneath her, the sea black under the moonlight. Tom snored softly beside the rudder. Kyle lay curled near the bow. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Then she noticed it. Frost lined the edge of the boat, delicate and glittering though the night was warm. She touched it. It didn't melt. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. The frost spread slowly, tendrils creeping across the wood toward where Frost Song lay wrapped in cloth. The sword's faint blue glow had brightened again, pulsing with steady rhythm. Tom stirred. "What's wrong?" She looked at him, her voice flat. "It's not gone." The frost reached the edge of the sail, and the air grew colder. The stars dimmed, swallowed by mist. Somewhere far out at sea, thunder rolled, not from a storm, but from deep beneath the water. The sea itself began to glow faintly blue. Cale awoke with a cry. "The water! It's moving!" The waves rose, slow and silent, towering higher with each breath. Arya grabbed the tiller, fighting to keep the bow straight. "Hold on!" A column of pale light erupted from the sea 100 yards ahead, blinding and terrible. The water around it churned, and something vast moved below the surface, something with wings. Tom shouted over the wind, "It's coming again!" Arya's heart hammered. "No, not it. Something else." And as she spoke, a shape broke from the water, a great serpent of ice and flame entwined, its body writhing, its eyes burning white. It rose high, towering above them, and then it turned its gaze upon her. The sea stilled. Its voice came not through sound, but through the air itself, vibrating in her bones. "Child of balance," it said. "The shadow sleeps, but its dream endures. You hold the key to the world's turning. Ice cannot die, and fire cannot rule. You must choose." Arya gripped Frostsong. Choose what? To wake or to wither? To bind the cold once more, or let it burn the seas clean? The choice is yours, and yours alone. The serpent's eyes blazed brighter, and the sea began to boil. Steam rose in pillars around the boat. Kyle screamed. Tom shouted prayers. But Arya stood unmoving, her cloak whipping in the wind, the sword's blue fire blazing in her hand. "I've seen too many die for gods and kings," she said. "I'll not choose their war again." She raised Frostsong high, and its light split into two, one half white as snow, the other red as flame. The sea roared in answer. The serpent bowed its head. "Then you are both, wolf of the flame, heart of the frost. Remember this: what sleeps beneath the ice now dreams of you." It sank back into the depths, the water closing over it. The light faded, the mist withdrew, and the frost melted from the deck. When silence returned, Tom fell to his knees. "Tell me that was another dream." Arya looked at the horizon, where dawn had begun to break, a pale, uncertain light. "If it was," she said quietly, "then the world will wake with me." And as the sun rose, the first gulls appeared above the waves, calling toward the east. The wind shifted, warm and steady, filling their sail. They turned their bow homeward, leaving behind the edge of the world, yet knowing the ice had not truly ended, only changed its name. The sea carried them eastward for 7 days. Each dawn bled silver over the waves, and each night the stars burned colder. The wind was steady, whispering through the sail like a half-remembered song. Arya steered by instinct, for the compass no longer turned true. There was something different in the air now, the sense of a world rearranged. The sea itself had changed. Where once it had been black and deep, now strange patches of luminous ice drifted upon its surface, faintly glowing from within. They moved slowly, as if alive, sliding past the boat with barely a sound. When the moon struck them, they shimmered with colors no mortal fire could make. Cale had stopped speaking altogether. The boy stared out at the horizon with wide, hollow eyes, his mind lost somewhere beyond sight. Tom kept to the ropes and the rudder, working without complaint, but Arya could read the fear in the hard set of his jaw. On the third night, as Arya took the watch, she heard a sound from below, a low hum rising from the water itself. She leaned over the railing and saw, beneath the rippling surface, a faint blue glow moving with them. At first, she thought it some trick of the moonlight. Then the shape grew clearer. A face. It drifted just below the surface, pale, motionless, its eyes open and unblinking. A woman's face, smooth as carved glass, hair floating like seaweed. For an instant, Arya thought she recognized it, the same visage she had seen beneath the ice on that first night after the wreck. The hum grew louder. Arya gripped Frostsong's hilt, but before she could draw it, the face vanished, swallowed by the dark. Only ripples remained. When morning came, she told no one. The wind freshened, and by the 5th day, the sky turned heavy with clouds. The air grew colder again, and Tom muttered that the storm smell had returned. Yet no storm came. The clouds hung unmoving, thick and low, and the light dimmed to a strange twilight that lasted hours. On the 7th day, they saw land. At first, it was only a faint smudge against the horizon. Then, the shape of cliffs emerged, black and sharp, rising from the sea like a broken crown. Relief crossed Tom's face, but Arya's heart gave no such comfort. The cliffs were wrong somehow. They seemed too high, too still. As they drew closer, she realized why. They were not cliffs. They were walls of ice, vast and smooth, streaked with dark stone, stretching endlessly north and south. The sea broke against them with a hollow boom. Kyle finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "The wall," he whispered. "We're back." But Arya shook her head. "No, the wall is east of the world. This..." She trailed off, unable to find words. The barrier towered higher than the wall of the north ever had, vanishing into cloud. It glowed faintly blue, like veins of frozen fire. They found a narrow inlet where the water had eaten through the ice, forming a tunnel of frozen glass. Tom hesitated at the mouth. "You sure about this?" "No," Arya said, "but we didn't come all this way to turn back." They entered. The boat slid through the passage, the sound of their oars echoing off the walls. The light grew dimmer the deeper they went, the air colder. Frost Song began to glow faintly at Arya's side, casting long blue shadows across the ice. Then they saw it, an opening ahead, round and vast, where the sea widened into a hidden bay. The walls there were carved with runes and spirals, just like those in the ancient tower. But these were newer, sharper, as if recently made. At the center of the bay stood an island, small and flat, crowned with a single black stone. Arya guided the boat toward it. As they neared, the hum returned, deep and slow, thrumming through the air and water alike. Kyle whimpered softly, covering his ears. Tom muttered prayers under his breath. When they reached the shore, Arya leapt out and stepped onto the black stone. It was smooth and warm to the touch, despite the cold. Frost Song pulsed brighter, responding to the unseen rhythm beneath her feet. Then the light shifted. Lines began to glow across the stone, a pattern of circles and spirals spreading outward. The hum grew louder until it filled the air like a storm. "Arya," Tom shouted, "step away." But she could not. Something held her fast. The sword vibrated in her hand, and the warmth from the stone surged up through her boots, searing hot. She fell to one knee, gritting her teeth. Images flashed before her eyes, faces of men and women long dead, the ruins of Winterfell covered in snow, dragons flying over frozen seas, and a shadow stretching across the world. Then she heard the voice again. "Child of the wolf, you broke the chain. Now forge it anew." "I won't," she whispered. "I've seen what chains do. Without balance, all burns or freezes. The flame will consume the ice, and the ice will drown the flame. You must choose what endures." Arya's breath came in ragged bursts. "I choose neither." The light flared, blinding. The air shook, and the sea around the island began to rise, waves lifting like hands. Frost Song's glow turned white, fierce and pure, and the hum broke into 1,000 echoes. Cale screamed. Tom grabbed the boy and dragged him back into the boat, shouting for Arya to move. But she could not hear him anymore. The world dissolved into light. She stood again upon a field of snow, endless, untouched. A man waited there, tall and pale, cloaked in fur. His eyes were gray as stone. "Jon." He smiled faintly. "You always were the stubborn one." She reached for him, but he faded like mist. "You're not real," she said. "Neither am I gone," his voice replied, softer now. "The pack endures, even beyond the cold. Do what you must, little sister." The field darkened. The snow began to fall upward, drawn toward the sky. Then she was back on the island, gasping, the sound of rushing water filling her ears. The black stone cracked beneath her. The spirals flared once more, and then went dark. The sea stilled. The hum was gone. Arya rose shakily. The sword no longer glowed. Its light had died. She turned toward the boat. Tom and Kyle were staring at her, eyes wide with awe and fear. "What did you do?" Tom asked. Arya looked down at the stone. "I ended it," she said softly. "Or began it. I don't know which." They sailed away in silence, leaving the bay behind. The tunnel of ice glimmered faintly as they passed through it, and when they emerged into open sea again, the clouds above were breaking. Dawn spilled across the water, warm and golden. The glow of the strange drifting ice had vanished. Only the sea remained, vast, endless, and quiet. Kyle fell asleep at last, head resting on Tom's arm. Tom steered the boat with tired hands, his face lined but peaceful. Arya stood at the bow, watching the horizon. The world was turning again. The wind smelled of salt and life. For the first time in many days, she felt the warmth of the sun upon her face. Yet somewhere deep beneath that calm, she knew the hum still lingered, faint but waiting. The cold remembered her name now, and though she had left the edge of the world behind, it would follow her, in dreams, in the whisper of the waves, in the frost that sometimes bloomed upon her blade. She smiled faintly into the wind. "Then let it come," she murmured. "The wolf remembers too." The boat drifted east, carrying them toward the faint, distant promise of home, and behind them, far beyond sight, the sea closed over the black stone, sealing its secret beneath the water once more. For many days and nights the sea was kind, as though the world itself sought to forget what had been woken and buried once more. The wind bore them eastward, the sun rode higher, and the chill that had haunted the air since the frozen lands began to fade. Yet in Arya's heart the cold remained, a quiet echo that no warmth could chase away. Tom kept the tiller steady, his face drawn and weathered, eyes half hidden beneath his brow. He spoke little now, though when he did, it was often to curse the wind, the sea, or the fate that had brought them beyond the maps of men. Kyle, the boy, slept often, worn to silence by the weight of what he had seen. He muttered in his dreams, whispers of frost and eyes like blue stars, and Arya sometimes thought she heard the hum of that ancient power in his voice. Each night, Arya took the watch. She stared out across the black water, the stars shining cold and bright above. Frost Song lay across her knees, wrapped in its torn cloth, the faintest gleam of light pulsing beneath. When she closed her eyes, she saw faces, John's, her mother's, the guardian of ice who had given her the sword, and the pale flame that had risen from the sea, all bound together now in one endless circle. She had chosen balance, or so she thought. But what was balance when one hand held fire and the other frost? On the 10th morning, land appeared on the horizon, a long, low line of green and gold. The air grew warmer as they neared it, filled with the cries of gulls and the scent of earth. Arya felt her heart quicken. For the first time since they had sailed west, she smelled life again. "Land!" Tom shouted, his voice breaking with disbelief. "By the seven, land!" Kyle sat up, blinking sleep from his eyes. "Is it home?" Arya squinted toward the shore. Hills rolled beyond the beach, dotted with trees. Smoke rose from somewhere inland, faint but certain. "Aye," she said, "or close enough." They beached the small craft on a stretch of sand where pale grasses waved in the wind. The earth felt strange beneath her boots, too soft after so long upon the ice and deck. Tom kissed the ground and muttered thanks to any gods that would listen. Kyle laughed for the first time in weeks, chasing the surf like a boy again. Yet Arya stood apart, Her gaze turned inland. She knew this was no true homecoming. The sea might have carried them east, but the lands of Westeros lay far yet. And still, something within her stirred, a sense that the world they had left was not the same one they had returned to. They followed a small stream inland, where willows grew thick and the air hummed with insects. By nightfall, they reached a village, a scatter of thatched roofs and low stone walls, smoke curling from chimneys. The people watched them from a distance, their faces wary. But when Tom hailed them in the tongue of the Vale, an old man came forward. "You've the look of ghosts," the man said, his eyes narrow but not unkind. "From where do you come?" "Far west," Tom replied, "beyond the sunset." The villagers laughed uneasily, crossing themselves. "No one sails that way," said one woman. "There's naught but the edge of the world." Tom smiled grimly. "Aye, and we found it." They gave the strangers food and a place to rest. That night, Arya sat beside the hearth in the village hall, the warmth of the fire strange upon her skin. She listened to the murmur of voices, the laughter, the crackle of burning wood. For a time she could almost pretend she was home. But when she touched the hilt of Frostsong, it was cold as ever. Later, when the village slept, she stepped outside. The moon hung full above the fields, silvering the grass. She walked beyond the last cottages to where the land met the sea. The tide had come in, washing gently against the rocks. The water glowed faintly, as if moonlight had sunk beneath it. She knelt, dipping her hand into the shallows. The chill bit her skin, and beneath it, the faint vibration of that familiar hum. Her breath caught. The light spread slowly outward, pale and pulsing. She snatched her hand back, watching as ripples of frost shimmered across the surface before vanishing. The sea stilled again. She heard a step behind her. Tom stood there, a shadow in the moonlight. "It's still with you," he said quietly. "It never left," Arya replied. "I thought ending it meant peace, but it wasn't an ending, just a turning." Tom studied her face. "Then what now?" She looked eastward, toward where the stars gathered over unseen lands. "Home," she said. "Winterfell. I'll tell them what I've seen." "And what will you tell them?" "The truth," she said, though she knew the truth would sound like madness. He nodded slowly. "I'll not go that far. I've had enough of ghosts and gods for one life." He gave her a faint smile. "But you were born for it. I can see it in your eyes." She smiled back, though it was small and fleeting. "You should rest, Tom. Tomorrow we part ways." He hesitated, then clasped her shoulder. "You're as brave as any Stark I ever heard of. May the gods, old or new, watch over you." At dawn they said their farewells. Tom remained with the villagers, and Cale chose to stay as well. The boy's eyes had grown old before their time, but he smiled when Arya pressed a dagger into his hand. "Keep it sharp," she told him, "and keep to the light when the shadows call." He nodded solemnly. "Will I see you again?" "Perhaps," she said, "if the winds are kind." Then she turned east once more. For weeks she journeyed alone, following the coast. She crossed hills where sheep grazed, and rivers where the water ran sweet and clear. Everywhere she went, she heard whispers of strange things, of frost blooming in summer, of stars that fell as shards of ice, of a cold wind that carried voices. The Northmen said it was the old magic stirring again, the echo of the long night. Arya said nothing. She only walked faster. One evening, as the sun set red behind her, she reached a hill where the air was sharp with pine. Below lay a broad plain of snow, the first she had seen since leaving the frozen west. And beyond it, faint but certain. She saw towers rising against the pale horizon. Winterfell. Her throat tightened. She had seen it 1,000 times in dreams, yet the sight struck her like a blade. Smoke rose from the chimneys. The banners of the direwolf flew once more. She descended the hill slowly, her heart heavy with all she had carried. At the gate, the guards did not know her. She had changed too much. The weathered face, the scar on her brow, the strange sword at her side. But when she spoke her name, one of them ran within, shouting for the Meister. Moments later, a figure hurried down from the yard. A woman, tall and dark-haired, her cloak of gray fur stirring in the wind. Sansa. For a heartbeat, they only stared at one another. Then Sansa ran forward, and Arya caught her in her arms. Neither spoke. The silence between them said enough. When at last they parted, Sansa looked her over, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Where have you been?" Arya looked past her sister, to the halls and walls of home, to the smoke curling from the hearths, to the snow falling soft upon the stones. "Far," she said, "beyond the maps, beyond everything." Sansa smiled faintly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Then you've come home at last." Arya nodded. Yet in her heart, she knew the truth. She had brought something of the far world back with her. The cold still sang in her blood, and frost song still whispered softly in her hand. She looked north, beyond the walls, where the sky was paling with the first touch of winter. Somewhere beneath that endless snow, the ice was remembering, and somewhere beyond, the flame was dreaming. The balance she had forged would not last forever. Nothing ever did. But for now, she was home, and that was enough. Snow fell thick upon Winterfell the night Arya Stark returned. The flakes came heavy and slow, drifting through the gray air like ash. She stood upon the battlements wrapped in fur, watching the courtyard below fill with white. The old gods were whispering again. She could feel it in the trees, in the air, in her blood. It had been many moons since she crossed the gates, since her sister's arms had closed around her. Sansa had wept with quiet joy, and the halls had echoed with celebration. For a time, Arya had allowed herself to believe that peace could last, but peace was never meant for wolves. The realm was stirring. From the south came rumors of summer snow and frozen rivers. Merchants spoke of fields of frost that bloomed overnight. And always, when the wind blew from the west, Arya heard it again. The hum beneath the world, soft and steady, like a heartbeat too slow to belong to any living thing. She thought often of the guardian of ice, of the last shadow, of the black stone that had cracked beneath her hand. She had chosen balance. Yet balance was not stillness. It was struggle unending. A knock came at the door behind her. "My lady," said the steward, "the Queen requests your presence in the great hall." Arya nodded, pulling her cloak tight. She walked the corridors she had known as a child, their stones familiar beneath her boots, yet changed, as though the very castle had grown older in her absence. In the hall, fire roared in the hearths. Sansa sat upon the dais, her crown of silver resting upon hair the color of autumn leaves. The Queen rose when Arya entered. "There's word from the wall," she said. "The Maester brought it this morning." Arya frowned. "The wall still stands?" "For now," Sansa replied, and handed her a scroll sealed in black wax. Arya broke it open. The words were brief, written in a hand she did not know. "The dead do not walk, but the cold walks in their place. The ice beneath the frost fangs hums like the breath of a giant. Ravens will not cross it. The wildlings flee south again. We remember the name Stark." Arya lowered the parchment. It begins anew. Sansa met her gaze. Tell me truly, sister, what did you wake out there? Arya hesitated. The firelight flickered across her face. Not death, she said at last. Not life either. Something that remembers both. I thought I had bound it, but the world itself is the chain, and the chain is breaking. Sansa said nothing. Her eyes were cool and steady, the eyes of a ruler. Then we must be ready. Steel will not save you, Arya warned, nor fire. Then what will? Arya looked down at her hand. The faint blue light that lived within Frostsong glimmered through the cloth that bound it. Perhaps what lies between. That night, sleep would not come. Arya wandered through the Godswood, where the heart tree stood silent beneath its veil of snow. She knelt before it and laid her hand upon the pale bark. Tell me what you see, she whispered. You, who remember all things. The wind sighed through the branches. For a long time there was only the rustle of leaves and the distant howl of a wolf. Then the whisper came, not from the tree, but from within her. The ice stirs beneath the western sea. The fire wakes in the southern sands. The world turns and the balance breaks. You cannot flee what you have bound to yourself. Arya closed her eyes. Then I will face it. You will, said the voice, but not alone. When she rose, she saw a figure standing among the trees. A direwolf, taller than a horse, its fur gray as mist. Its golden eyes met hers and her heart leapt. Nymeria, she breathed. The wolf stepped forward, slow and wary. Snow clung to her fur and scars marked her flanks, but her eyes were bright with recognition. Around her moved shadows, wolves, a whole pack, silent and watching. Arya smiled faintly. You found your pack, she said. And so did I. Nymeria came closer, brushed her great head against Arya's hand, and for an instant the cold inside her broke. The hum faded, and she felt only the warmth of fur and breath. But the moment passed quickly. The wolf lifted her head, ears twitching. A low growl rumbled in her throat. Arya followed her gaze and saw it. The faint shimmer of frost creeping along the roots of the weirwood, thin as spider silk but spreading fast. The hum returned, deeper now, echoing through the ground. The air grew colder. Arya drew Frostsong. The blade flared blue-white, its light dancing on the snow. The frost stopped, quivered, then began to retreat. Sansa's voice came from the edge of the wood. Arya? Arya turned. Her sister stood cloaked in gray, a lantern in hand. Behind her came two guards. What is it? Sansa asked, seeing the blade's light. Arya sheathed the sword slowly. The cold is here, she said. It's not waiting for spring. Sansa's jaw tightened. Then Winterfell stands ready. Arya studied her sister. No castle stands against this. You must send word south. Warn King Bran, the Vale, the Riverlands. Tell them the ice is moving again. Sansa nodded, though her eyes lingered on the sword at Arya's side. And you? I'll go north, Arya said. To the wall, to where it began. The next morning, she left before dawn. The gates of Winterfell opened onto a world of white and silver. She rode alone, Nymeria and her pack ghosting through the woods beside her. For days she traveled north through snowfields and frozen streams. The air grew sharper, the nights longer. By the time the wall rose before her, a jagged spine of ice against the pale sky, her breath was frost, and her heart was stone. The castle at its base was near empty. Only a handful of black-cloaked brothers remained to tend the fires. They looked at her with awe and fear when she gave her name. We've heard the wind singing strange, said the oldest among them, a man with white beard and missing eye. "There's light beneath the ice now. We thought it only the aurora, but it hums like a song." Arya nodded. "Show me." They led her beyond the gate, into the frozen wild. The snow stretched endless, unbroken save for ridges of black rock. When night fell, the hum grew clearer, a pulse beneath the ground. They reached a hollow where the ice split open in a wide crevasse. Blue light glowed faintly below. Arya stood at the edge, looking down. Frost Song began to sing, a faint, keening note that matched the rhythm beneath the earth. "It's the same," she whispered. "The same voice from the west." The old ranger crossed himself. "Then gods have mercy on us." Arya stepped closer. The cold rose in waves, sharp and familiar. She could feel the thing below stirring again, seeking her. She drew the blade. The light brightened until the snow around her turned to glass. "If it comes," she said, "it will find me waiting." Nymeria's howl split the night, fierce and long. The sound echoed across the frozen waste, rolling north toward the endless dark. The hum answered. From deep beneath the ice came a single crack, sharp and echoing, like the shattering of a world. Arya Stark stood unmoving, her sword blazing blue, her shadow long upon the snow. The balance was breaking again, and she, who had walked where the ice grows, was the only one left to hold it together. The wind beyond the wall was sharper than any blade, whispering through the endless snow like a voice made of glass. Arya rode into the white wilderness, her cloak snapping behind her, Frost Song glimmering faintly at her hip. Around her moved Nymeria and the pack, silent gray shapes fading in and out of the swirling frost. The sky hung low and colorless, and even the sun was a pale ghost behind the veil of cloud. Every sound carried too far here. When the wolves padded across the frozen ground, their paws echoed like heartbeats beneath the earth. Arya could feel the hum rising stronger with each mile north. It pulsed in rhythm with her own heart, as though something vast and unseen had awakened to her presence. By the second day, the wind changed. It no longer came from the west, but from below, cold exhalations rising from cracks in the ice. In places, the ground glowed faintly, threads of blue light twisting like veins beneath the surface. Arya knelt once, pressing her palm to the frost. The pulse was steady, ancient, patient. Nymeria growled low. "I feel it too," Arya murmured. "It's watching." They pressed on until they reached the coast, a vast white plain where the sea met the frozen shore. There was no open water, only ice ridged and broken, stretching to the horizon. The air carried a faint sound, like the deep groan of shifting glaciers. She remembered this sound from the far west, from the day the shadow had fallen. By nightfall, she found what she had come for. A rift split the ice ahead, wide as a river, its depths glowing with that same unearthly blue. The hum that had haunted her dreams poured from it, louder now, clearer. No longer just sound, but words she could almost understand. Child of wolves, flames bearer. Arya gritted her teeth. "Show yourself." The wind answered, swirling around her in a spiral of snow. From the light below rose a figure, a shadow taking form, pale and vast, its eyes burning faintly blue. Not the last shadow, not holy. This was something less and more, an echo, a shard of that ancient being bound within the ice. "You crossed the world to bind me," the voice said, "deep as thunder beneath a mountain. Yet you carry my mark still." Arya drew Frost Song. The blade flared white blue, light spilling across the snow. "You've no place here. The world belongs to the living." The shadow tilted its head. "Does it? Look around you, girl. The cold endures when fire dies. The sea forgets the sun. The wind forgets the warmth. All things return to silence in the end. Then let silence wait, she said, and lunged. Frostsong cut through the air, and the light from the blade struck the shadow. It shrieked, an echo that shattered the ice for a league around. But even as it split apart, the mist reformed. The voice laughed, soft and cold. You cannot kill what you have already become. The words struck deeper than any wound. For a heartbeat, Arya saw herself reflected in the ice, her face pale, her eyes burning faintly blue like those of the dead. She stumbled back, horror twisting through her chest. "No," she whispered. "I am not you." The shadow spread its arms. "You are balance. You are both. You ended the dream, but you carry the dreamer. Every step you take, the cold follows. You freed me, little wolf. Now free yourself." The hum swelled until it filled her skull. The world blurred, the snow melting away into light. She stood once more upon the black island, the stone cracked beneath her feet. The sea burned white, and from its depths rose the great serpent of ice and fire she had seen before. "You hold the key," the serpent's voice whispered. "One choice binds the world, another breaks it. What will you give to end the song?" Arya knelt, pressing her hands to the stone. The fissures glowed beneath her palms, spreading outward in spirals. "If I strike again, the ice will shatter, the seas will rise, men will burn or freeze." The serpent's eyes narrowed. "All endings are beginnings. Choose." The wind screamed around her. She thought of Winterfell, of Sansa's steady gaze, of Jon's smile beneath falling snow. She thought of her father, of her mother, of all those who had bled for a peace that never lasted. Then she thought of the hum, the endless song of the cold, patient, and eternal. "I will not let the world die again," she said. "Not for you, not for any god." She lifted Frostsong high. The sword's light burned so bright it seemed to split the sky. Then she drove it into the stone, not to shatter it, but to join it. The blade sank deep, and the light poured upward, spilling into the heavens like a river of fire. The sea roared, the serpent screamed, the shadow dissolved into mist, and Arya felt herself pulled apart, not in pain, but in release. The warmth of life and the chill of death met within her, and for a heartbeat, she was both. When she opened her eyes, she lay once more upon the snow beside the rift. The light had faded. The hum was gone. Frostsong was no longer at her side, only a faint mark in the ice where it had been. Nymeria nosed her cheek, whining softly. Arya reached up, her hand trembling, and touched the wolf's fur. It was warm, alive. "It's done," she whispered. The shadow was gone. The air was still. For the first time in many days, she heard nothing but the wind and her own heartbeat. She rose slowly, every limb heavy, and looked to the horizon. The dawn was breaking, a true dawn this time, red and gold and living. The ice no longer glowed beneath the surface. The pulse of the world had gone quiet. Nymeria lifted her head and howled, a long, mournful sound that carried far across the plain. The other wolves answered, their voices rising until the air trembled. Arya smiled faintly. "Come," she said. "Let's go home." They turned south. As she rode, she felt the cold leaving her piece by piece. Her breath no longer misted in the air, and her skin warmed beneath the pale sun. Yet a faint whisper lingered at the edge of hearing, no longer the hum, but something gentler. A song without words, born of both ice and flame. By the time the wall's shadow rose before her again, the snow had begun to melt. Streams of clear water ran down from the hills, glinting in the light. The black stones of the castles gleamed wet and new, as though the world had been washed clean. The brothers of the Night's Watch gathered to meet her, their faces pale with awe. "The shaking stopped," said the one-eyed ranger. "The ice has gone still. What did you do?" Arya dismounted, brushing snow from her cloak. "I listened," she said, and the world listened back. They did not understand, nor did she expect them to. She looked north one last time, where the horizon shimmered faintly gold beneath the rising sun. The cold had not been destroyed. It had been taught to sleep. As she turned south once more, she thought of Sansa, of home, of the pack. She thought of balance, fragile, fleeting, but alive. And somewhere deep below, beneath sea and stone, a single pulse echoed in answer. Not warning this time, but promise. The world would remember the wolf who walked where the ice grew. Spring came late to the north that year, creeping slow and uncertain over the bones of winter. The snows melted first in the lowlands, then on the hilltops, revealing dark earth hungry for the sun. Rivers once frozen began to stir, their ice breaking apart in long, echoing groans that rolled through the valleys like the sigh of some waking giant. Arya Stark rode south beneath those thawing skies, her horse's hooves splashing through muddy meltwater. The air was alive with birdsong and the scent of pine sap. Behind her trailed Nymeria's pack, gray shadows moving silent through the woods. For the first time in months, she felt the warmth of the world touch her skin. Yet even as the snow gave way to green, Arya felt the ghost of frost beneath her heart. The cold she had carried from beyond the sea would never wholly leave her now. It was part of her, the price of the choice she had made. By the time she reached Winterfell, the castle had shaken off much of its winter silence. The courtyard rang with hammers and laughter. Banners snapped bright against the sky. The people greeted her with smiles and whispers. Some bowed low, calling her Lady Stark. Others simply stared in awe at the woman who had vanished beyond the sunset and returned when all believed her lost. Sansa met her in the Godswood. The Queen of the North stood tall and proud, her cloak of gray fur glimmering faintly in the morning light. When Arya dismounted, Sansa stepped forward and embraced her without a word. "You came back," Sansa said softly. "I told you I would." Sansa drew back and studied her face. "You've changed. So has the world," Arya replied. They walked together beneath the heart tree, whose red leaves whispered faintly in the breeze. The air smelled of wet earth and sap. Beneath its boughs, the carved face wept slow tears of melting frost. "The wall holds," Sansa said. "The rivers run free again. But there are tales of strange lights in the north sky, of frost blooming on graves, of wolves larger than horses roaming the far wilds." Arya smiled faintly. "The world remembers what it was. It will not forget so easily." "And what of you, sister?" Sansa asked. "Will you stay this time?" Arya looked toward the horizon, where sunlight lay on the hills like gold. "For a while. There's peace here now. I can feel it." Sansa's gaze softened. "You've earned peace, Arya." Peace, Arya thought, was a fragile thing. It never stayed long, but perhaps it could rest a while before moving on. That night, Winterfell feasted. Long tables filled the great hall, candles gleaming against flagons of mead and plates of roast venison. The walls shook with song and laughter. Arya sat beside her sister, the warmth of the fire bright on her face, yet her eyes kept drifting to the sword that lay at her side. Frostsong no longer shone with light. Since she had driven it into the heart of the world, the blade had grown dull, its glow fading to a faint shimmer only she could see. But when she touched the hilt, A slow thrum stirred beneath her palm, the faint echo of that ancient hum, gentle now, almost at peace. Across the hall, the minstrels began a slow, sad tune about heroes who vanished beyond the sea. Arya smiled, but the sound filled her with a strange ache. Later, when the fire had burned low and the hall had quieted, she slipped outside. The night air was cool, the sky bright with stars. The moon rode high above the broken towers, casting pale light over the yard. She walked toward the stables, where Nymeria waited, her yellow eyes glowing in the dark. "Restless too?" Arya murmured. The wolf whined softly, pressing her great head against Arya's side. Arya stroked her fur, feeling the warmth of it seep into her hand. "I thought I'd lost you once," she said. "I thought I'd lost myself." The wolf huffed, as if to say she was found again. Arya lifted her gaze northward. The sky was clear, and for a heartbeat she thought she saw faint blue light flickering along the horizon, cold and distant, yet beautiful. It did not frighten her, not anymore. She had seen where the ice grows, had walked its silent halls and faced what slept beneath. The world's cold heart had looked upon her and known her name. Now the cold was quiet, but something deep within her understood. Quiet was not forever. The world turned in endless circles, light chasing shadow, fire chasing frost. Someday the ice would rise again, and when it did, another would take up the blade. Arya would be long gone by then. She smiled at the thought. The world doesn't end, Nymeria. It just changes shape. The wolf's tail brushed the ground. The next morning she rose early. The courtyard was misty, the air damp with dew. She found Sansa in the tower solar, already reading letters by lamplight. "I'm leaving," Arya said simply. Sansa looked up, startled but not surprised. "Where?" "South first, then maybe east again. There's still more world left to see. I've been to the edge of it, but not all of it." Sansa set the letter aside. "Will you ever stop wandering?" Arya smiled. "Maybe when the world stops turning." Sansa rose and crossed the room. "Take care, Arya. Wherever you go, remember, you have a home here." "I know." Arya hesitated, then embraced her. "Keep the north safe. If the cold ever stirs again, light the fires and send word." Sansa's eyes glistened. "And if the fire grows too hot?" Arya's lips curved. "Then remember me. I'll cool it for you." They laughed softly together, and for a moment it was as if they were children again, chasing one another through the courtyards of old Winterfell. By midday, Arya was gone. She rode through the open gates with Nymeria pacing at her side, the wind carrying the faint toll of the castle bell. The road stretched southward, bright with sunlight. She did not look back. Weeks later, travelers spoke of seeing a lone rider near the Trident, a woman with a gray wolf at her heels and a sword that gleamed like ice under the stars. They said she rode west by night and vanished at dawn. Others swore they saw her standing at the edge of the sea, gazing toward the horizon where the sun sank into gold. In the far north, the spring thaw deepened. The rivers ran swift, the snows retreated, and green returned to the world. Beneath the ice, the hum that had haunted the ages faded to silence. And yet, sometimes, when the nights grew still, the fishermen who cast their nets from the western isles claimed they heard a sound far below the waves, a faint rhythm like the beating of a heart, steady and slow. They called it the Song of the Wolf. But in the halls of Winterfell, when the fire burned low and the wind sighed through the stones, Sansa Stark would sometimes lift her head, listen to the silence, and smile, because she knew her sister lived still. Somewhere beyond the horizon, where the ice grows, and where the world never ends. The sea was calm when Arya reached the western shore once more. The winds that had once torn her sails now carried her gently, as though the ocean itself remembered her passage and bowed in quiet respect. She had ridden for months across the realm, from the snows of the north to the green of the Reach and the cliffs of the Sunset Sea, following roads that men had long forgotten. Everywhere she passed, the world was stirring again. Villages rebuilt, fields thawed, and children laughed without fear. Yet in every tavern and hall she visited, she heard whispers of the strange, flames that burned blue, rivers that froze in midsummer, stars falling like shards of ice. Always small things, fleeting, but enough to remind her that peace was never a permanent thing. Arya did not run from it this time. She had learned that light and shadow were threads in the same weave. Her task now was not to end either, but to walk the line between. She came at last to the cliff where her first voyage had begun, years ago, the same place she had left behind when she'd sailed west into the unknown. The sea below was endless and golden beneath the setting sun. The wind smelled of salt and grass. Nymeria stood beside her, her fur silvered by age, but her eyes still fierce. The great wolf had followed her across the world, through storm and silence, never wavering. Arya placed her hand on Nymeria's neck. "We started here," she said softly. "Seems right to end here, too." The wolf tilted her head, as if to ask what end she spoke of. Arya smiled faintly. "Not the kind that means dying, the kind that means changing." Below, the tide surged against the rocks, glimmering like liquid glass. For a long time, Arya stood watching the horizon, her cloak whipping in the wind. She could almost see the shapes of the lands she had left beyond that vast water. Snowbound castles, green valleys, her sister's bright banners flying. Her heart ached, but it was a sweet ache. She built a small camp by the cliff's edge, lighting a fire of driftwood as night came down. The stars spread wide and clear above, bright as jewels. She ate little and spoke less. The sea's murmur was enough. Then, as the fire burned low, the air changed. The wind stilled, the waves quieted, and the faint hum she thought she had left behind whispered once more through the earth. Arya rose slowly. The glow began deep beneath the sea, pale blue, like veins opening beneath water. It grew stronger, reaching toward the shore until the surf itself gleamed faintly. She had known this moment would come. "Still not done, are you?" she said to the dark. "You should have stayed sleeping." A voice answered, not from the air, but from within her mind, soft and ancient. Nothing that sleeps forever truly dreams alone. The sea rippled, and a shape rose from it, not monstrous this time, nor terrible, but vast and solemn. It was neither man nor beast, but the suggestion of both, formed of mist and moonlight. Its eyes were pale as stars. "You are its echo," Arya said quietly, "what remains of what I ended." "I am memory," it replied. "I am what the cold keeps and what the fire forgets. You forged the balance, but balance must be tended." Arya frowned. "You mean it's breaking again?" The figure's gaze turned eastward, toward the unseen lands of men. The seasons turn, men war, magic stirs in their wake. The song you silenced hums anew in smaller hearts. She sighed. "Always again." "Always," said the voice. "That is the curse and gift of life. But you, child of wolves, have walked beyond death and flame. You may teach them to remember." Arya's hand rested on her belt where Frostsong once hung. The blade was gone, surrendered to the ice, but she still felt its weight, not of metal, but of purpose, "I can't rule them," she said. "I can only show them the path." "Then show them," the voice said, fading with the wind. "You are the bridge between what was and what will be." The light beneath the water dimmed, and the sea grew still again. Arya stood alone upon the cliff, the stars bright above her. The hum was gone, but she knew it lingered somewhere deep within the earth, quiet for now, waiting. It would rise again someday, as all things do, but when it did, the world would be ready. In the morning, she broke camp. The sky was gray and soft, the sea calm. Nymeria walked at her side as she followed the path down to the beach where the tide had drawn back, leaving lines of pale shells gleaming like frost. There, half buried in the sand, she found a fragment of black stone, smooth, cold, carved with a spiral. She turned it in her hand, the mark faint but unmistakable, a remnant of the far world. She cast it into the sea. "Sleep," she said. "Dream of nothing." Nymeria barked once, a sound that echoed across the empty shore. By midday, they were moving inland again. The air grew warmer with each mile, the earth soft beneath the grass. Villages dotted the hillsides, smoke rising from their chimneys. Children waved as she passed. Few recognized her, and fewer still knew her name, though some whispered of the gray wolf that followed the quiet wanderer. Arya didn't correct them. In one village, she stopped to rest at an inn whose walls were carved with old runes of the first men. The innkeeper's daughter asked where she was going, and Arya only smiled. "Where the road takes me." The girl nodded wisely. "That's the best place to go." As night fell again, Arya dreamed of Winterfell, of laughter, snow, and the warmth of home. She saw Sansa upon the battlements, her hair bright as fire beneath the northern sun, and Bran in his high tower, watching all the world through the eyes of crows. They were safe. The pack endured. She woke before dawn, the world silver and still. For a moment she thought she heard the faint sound of howling in the far distance, deep and wild. Nymeria lifted her head, listening, and Arya smiled. "It's all right," she said. "They're calling the dawn." She saddled her horse and mounted, the wolf pacing beside her. Together, they followed the rising sun. In the years to come, the bards would sing of a woman who walked between fire and frost, whose shadow stretched from the wall to the edge of the world. Some called her the Winter's Daughter, others the Ghost of the West. Yet those who met her spoke simply of a wanderer with eyes like storms, who carried no sword, but whose gaze could silence the wind. And when winter returned, as it always did, and the rivers froze and the winds howled through the north, children sitting by the hearth would whisper her name and swear that they heard a wolf's howl carried on the cold. Arya Stark of Winterfell, the girl who walked where the ice grows, would live in their stories. And perhaps, somewhere beyond the sunset and the snow, she still walked beneath strange stars, her wolf at her side, her eyes reflecting both fire and frost, keeper of balance, bearer of memory, and the quiet promise that no night lasts forever. Years passed, and the world turned through its endless wheel of seasons. Kings rose and fell, wars flared and faded, and the snows came and went over Winterfell's gray stones. Yet in every whisper of wind through the heart trees, in every ripple of moonlight on frozen rivers, a name endured: Arya Stark, the wolf who had gone west of west and returned again. Her tale had passed into legend. Sailors swore they'd seen her prowling the mists beyond the sunset sea, a dark figure on the prow of a ghost ship, her cloak of gray fur billowing like the wings of a raven. In the north, old men told their grandchildren that when the snow howled and the winds turned cruel, Arya walked the storm's edge, keeping the cold from creeping too far south. Yet there were few now alive who had ever truly known her. At Winterfell, Sansa ruled in calm wisdom. The years had silvered her hair, yet her eyes remained clear and strong as when her sister had last left her. On nights when the snow fell soft and the fire burned low, she would sit alone in the solar and look toward the west, wondering. Sometimes she thought she heard wolves crying far off beyond the hills, a low, mournful chorus that stirred her heart and brought tears unbidden to her eyes. "She's out there," she would whisper to the flames. "She always was." The masters of Old Town spoke of her differently. In their cold, candle-lit halls, they debated whether the stories of the Wolf of the West were truth or fancy. Some claimed she had died long ago, her bones lost in the frozen sea. Others believed she had found lands uncharted and now ruled among strange peoples beneath new stars. But none of them knew that the truth lay somewhere between, as all truths do. Far from Westeros, where the world's maps ended and the oceans curled into mist, there stood a shore of black sand and pale cliffs. The sea here was calm, forever whispering with the voices of things long forgotten. On that lonely coast stood a small cabin of driftwood and stone, its roof thatched with reeds, its hearth always burning. And there she lived, Arya Stark, daughter of Eddard and Catelyn, sister to kings and queens, the girl who had walked the halls of death and the lands of ice. Her hair had gone streaked with silver, her face lined by years and wind, but her eyes were still gray and bright as ever. Beside her hearth, Nymeria slept, her muzzle resting on her paws, her fur gone to frost, but her strength unbroken. Each morning, Arya would step outside and watch the dawn climb over the waves. Sometimes the light broke gold, sometimes red, sometimes pale as milk. Always it brought peace. She had thought once that her heart would never rest, that she would forever be chasing shadows, but the world had taught her that peace was not a gift given, but a choice taken. One evening, when the sun bled into the sea, she climbed the cliff above her home. From there, she could see the faint shimmer of the western horizon, where the sea met the mist and the sky met the unknown. The wind carried the smell of salt and cold, and somewhere far beneath the waves she felt that ancient hum, faint, no louder than a heartbeat, but still there. It was never truly gone. She closed her eyes and listened. The sound was softer now, no longer the song of doom it had once been. It was the rhythm of the world itself, life and death, flame and frost, forever chasing one another. "I understand now," she said aloud, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You weren't my enemy. You were what comes after." The sea gave no answer but its sigh. Nymeria climbed the slope behind her, slow but sure, and pressed against her leg. Arya laid a hand on the wolf's head, smiling faintly. "We did well, didn't we? The world still stands." The wolf huffed, her golden eyes gleaming with that same fierce loyalty that had once carried them through snow and shadow. As the stars brightened, Arya turned to look inland. Far beyond the horizon lay the lands of men, Winterfell, the Wall, the rivers and woods of her childhood. She imagined her kin there, Sansa in her hall of stone and fire, Bran in his tower of sight, Jon perhaps wandering the snows beyond the Wall with Ghost at his side. The pack had scattered long ago, yet in her heart she felt them all, still bound by threads stronger than time. She thought of her father's words, spoken long ago in the courtyard of Winterfell. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. She had been the lone wolf for a long time, but she was not alone anymore. The pack survived in memory, in story, in the world they had saved. As night deepened, she saw the northern lights rise over the sea, ribbons of green and blue dancing across the heavens. The light touched the waves, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw faces within them. Her mother's smile, Jon's steady gaze, the fierce eyes of the guardian of ice. "Old friends," she murmured. "Old ghosts." The wind carried a faint reply, though she could not tell if it was memory or magic. The cold remembers, but so does the flame. She smiled at that. Then we'll keep each other honest. The stars wheeled slowly overhead. Time slipped past like water. When at last she grew tired, Arya returned to her cabin and lay beside the hearth. Nymeria settled at her feet, her breath deep and steady. The fire crackled softly, its light flickering on the walls. Outside, the tide rose and fell, whispering its endless song. Long after Arya's eyes had closed, the flames burned low, and the embers dimmed to faint blue. The hum returned for one last time, filling the room with its gentle pulse. It was not cold now, nor cruel. It was the sound of rest. When dawn came, the sun found only quiet. The sea was still, the air soft and golden. The great wolf lay curled by the hearth, her fur silver with frost, her eyes closed. The door stood open, and beyond it, 2 sets of footprints led down to the shore, a woman's and a wolf's, ending where the waves met the sand. The tide washed them away. But far to the east, in the snows of Winterfell, Sansa Stark woke suddenly from sleep. The fire in her chamber flared bright, though no hand had touched it. Outside, the wolves of the Godswood howled together, their voices fierce and wild, echoing through the night. Sansa rose, went to the window, and looked westward. The sky there glowed faintly gold. She smiled through her tears. "Good hunting, little sister." And in that moment, a warm wind swept across the north, soft, fleeting, and alive, as though the sea itself had exhaled. The snows melted a little sooner that year, and the crops grew strong. The bards would later sing that Arya Stark had sailed once more into the west, beyond all lands of men, to guard the edge of the world. Others whispered that she became the wind that wanders the waves, watching over the balance she had forged. But those who knew the old stories said nothing. They only smiled when the dawn rose red over the sea, and the wolves howled in the hills, for they knew that where the ice grows, the wolf still walks.